When you walk through a forest, what do you see? You probably see a collection of individual trees standing silently, majestic and separate. You might see them as objects, a kind of beautiful, living architecture. You might even see them as competitors, each one fighting its own lonely battle for sunlight and water. What if I told you that this entire picture is wrong? What if you are not walking through a collection of silent, solitary individuals at all? What if you are, in fact, walking through a busy, bustling, and deeply intelligent city, a city that is alive with a constant stream of communication, a complex social network, and profound acts of cooperation, family loyalty, and community support? In his revolutionary and awe-inspiring book, The Hidden Life of Trees, the German forester and writer Peter Wohlleben pulls back the curtain of leaves and bark to reveal this secret world. Drawing on the latest groundbreaking scientific discoveries, as well as his own decades of intimate experience walking and working in the forest, he makes a stunning and world-changing case that trees are social beings. They are beings who communicate, who have memory, who feel, who care for their children, and who support their neighbors in times of need. This book is not just a collection of interesting facts about nature. It is a profound philosophical journey that will forever change the way you see the quiet, green world right outside your window, the social network under your feet. The secret to understanding the hidden life of trees lies, as it so often does, beneath the surface. For centuries, we saw trees as individuals because that's what our eyes could see above the ground. But the real story, the story of the forest as a community, is happening underground in a place that has been dubbed the Wood Wide Web. Wohlleben explains that the roots of the trees in a forest are not isolated. They are connected to one another by a vast, intricate, and ancient network of underground fungi. This is a symbiotic relationship, a beautiful partnership. The fungi, which can't produce their own sugar through photosynthesis, mine the soil for nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, and deliver these vital minerals to the tree roots. In exchange, the trees, which are masters of producing sugar from sunlight, give a portion of their sugar back to the fungi. But this fungal network, called a mycorrhizal network, does much more than just facilitate trade between a tree and a fungus. It connects the trees to each other. The network is a sprawling biological internet that links the roots of nearly every tree in the forest, creating a single, massive superorganism. Through this wood wide web, the trees are in constant communication. They can share resources. A large, healthy tree that is getting plenty of sunlight can send sugar and nutrients through the network to a smaller, younger tree that is struggling in its shade. They can send water from a wet area of the forest to a dry area. And perhaps most astoundingly, they can send information. This underground network is not just a plumbing system, it is a communications grid. It is the biological foundation for the forest as a true cooperative society. Through this wood wide web, the trees are in constant communication. They can share resources. A large, healthy tree that is getting plenty of sunlight can send sugar and nutrients through the network to a smaller, younger tree that is struggling in its shade. They can send water from a wet area of the forest to a dry area. And perhaps most astoundingly, they can send information. This underground network is not just a plumbing system, it is a communications grid. It is the biological foundation for the forest as a true, cooperative society. So if trees are connected, what are they talking about? The idea that trees can communicate sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, but Wohlleben presents compelling scientific evidence that it is a daily reality in the forest. Trees communicate in two primary ways, through the air and through the ground. Let's say an antelope or a giraffe walks up to an acacia tree in the African savanna and starts to eat its leaves. The acacia tree immediately recognizes this as an attack. In response, it starts pumping bitter-tasting toxins into its leaves to make them unpalatable. But it does more than that. It also releases a warning gas, a pheromone, into the air. This gas is a chemical message, a scent that drifts through the air to the neighboring acacia trees. The much faster and more efficient communication happens underground, through the wood wide web. Scientists have discovered that trees send electrical signals through their root tips and across the fungal network, much like the electrical impulses in our own nervous systems. They can use this network to share information about drought conditions, soil toxicity, or insect attacks, and they can do it much faster than they could through the air. The communication can also be auditory, though not in a way our ears can hear. Scientists have attached sensitive microphones to trees and have recorded the sounds they make. A healthy, happy tree is mostly silent, but a tree under the stress of a severe drought makes a noise. The water column inside the tree, called the xylem, begins to break, creating tiny vibrations, a high-frequency clicking sound. Wohlleben calls it a scream. It is the sound of a living being in distress. The forest is not a silent place. It is filled with a constant stream of messages, of warnings, and of cries for help. We just haven't had the right equipment to listen until now. The family tree, a story of motherhood and community. One of the most moving and profound discoveries Wohlleben shares is about the family dynamics of trees. He explains that trees, like many animals, can recognize their own kin. A mother tree knows which of the young saplings on the forest floor are her own children. How does she know? She is connected to them through the root network. And through that same wood wide web that serves as the forest's internet, she actively nurtures them. A young tree on the forest floor is in a very difficult situation. It is living in the deep shade of its parents, getting only a tiny fraction of the sunlight it needs to survive. So, the mother tree, who has a full canopy high up in the sky, produces an abundance of sugar, and she pumps that sugar down through her roots and through the fungal network, directly feeding it to her children. She is, in a very real sense, nursing her babies. This parental care is why a young tree growing in its natural forest environment has a much better chance of survival than a tree planted by a forester. Foresters often try to help young trees by clearing away the older trees around them to give them more light. But in doing so, they are severing that vital underground connection to the mother, leaving the young tree isolated and unsupported. This community support system extends beyond immediate family. The trees in a forest act as a true community. They will use the wood wide web to support their sick and struggling neighbors. Wohlleben tells the incredible story of finding an ancient mossy stump on the forest floor. The stump should have been dead and rotten for centuries, as it had no leaves to produce its own sugar. But when he scraped away at the bark, he found that it was still green and alive underneath. He realized that the surrounding beech trees were keeping it alive. They were pumping sugar through the root network to this old, incapacitated member of their community, year after year, decade after decade. Why would they do this? Because the forest is stronger as a whole than as a collection of individuals. A single tree, standing alone, is vulnerable to high winds and storms, but a forest creates its own microclimate. The trees protect each other. By keeping every member of the community alive, even the weak ones, they maintain the integrity of the forest canopy, which protects the moist, cool soil that they all depend on. It is a system of profound and deeply intelligent cooperation. A different kind of brain, the consciousness of trees. This is where Wohleben's book moves from fascinating science into the realm of truly mind-bending philosophy. He makes the controversial but compelling case that trees are not just complex biological machines. He argues that they are, in their own way, intelligent, conscious beings who can learn, remember, and feel. He asks us to consider the concept of a brain. We think of a brain as a single organ located in the head. But what if a brain could be decentralized? He points to the root tips of a tree. Each root tip is a marvel of sensory technology. It can sense gravity, water, toxins, and the presence of other roots. It processes this information and makes decisions about which way to grow. The vast root network of a single tree, with its millions of tiny, sensitive tips, acts as a kind of distributed brain, a vast and complex information processing network. He presents evidence that trees have memory. A tree that has survived a drought will learn from the experience. In subsequent years, it will begin to conserve water earlier in the season, remembering the past trauma and adjusting its behavior accordingly. An oak tree can remember the taste of a caterpillar's saliva. When a caterpillar starts chewing on its leaves, the tree will not only pump tannins into those leaves to make them bitter, but it will remember the specific chemical signature of that caterpillar. He even argues that trees can feel pain. When a branch is broken or a leaf is eaten, the tree sends electrical signals through its tissues, a response that is remarkably similar to the firing of pain receptors in a human nervous system. This use of anthropomorphic language, saying that trees talk, feel, and remember, is a deliberate philosophical choice. Wohlleben is not saying that a tree's consciousness is the same as a human's. He is arguing that our definition of intelligence and consciousness is far too narrow, far too centered on ourselves. He is inviting us to decenter the human experience and to consider the possibility that the world is filled with many different kinds of intelligence, many different ways of being alive and aware, the unhappy lives of lonely city trees. To hammer home his point about the importance of the forest as a social network, Wohlleben asks us to consider the life of a typical city tree. A tree planted alone in a park or on a city street is living a life of profound isolation and hardship. It is cut off from the wood wide web. It has no community to share resources with, no mother to nurture it, no neighbors to warn it of danger. Its roots are constrained by pavement and pipes. It is exposed to extreme heat from asphalt and constant air pollution. It is, in short, a social orphan living in a toxic and stressful environment. This is why, he explains, city trees die so much younger than their forest counterparts. A street tree might live for 60 or 80 years if it's lucky. A similar tree in a natural forest, supported by its community, can live for many hundreds or even thousands of years. The life of a city tree is a powerful and sad illustration of the book's central thesis. Trees are not designed to be solitary individuals. They are designed to be members of a community, and like humans, they suffer deeply when they are isolated from that community. The final powerful message of The Hidden Life of Trees is a call for a radical shift in our perspective. It is an invitation to see the world not as a hierarchy with humans at the top, but as a vast, interconnected community of beings, all of whom have their own intelligence, their own purpose, and their own intrinsic worth. It's a call for humility, for empathy, and for a deeper and more respectful relationship with the quiet, ancient, and profoundly intelligent life of the forest. It makes us realize that every time we walk into the woods, we are entering a sacred and complex society. It is a deep inquiry into a world we thought we knew, a world that is far more magical and mysterious than we ever could have imagined. If you are ready to discover this hidden world, you are in the right place. Welcome to Geeky Philosopher. Subscribe and let's continue to explore the wonders of our living planet together.